Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Sistership Circle Inspiration Call. And this week, we are talking about our relationship with men. Specifically, how do we honor them? How do we partner with them? And, I think that this is a really important piece to Sistership Circle, is we have a tendency of wanting to come into the circle for our nurturing from our sisters, and there's this tendency to then want to blame men, to have them be the enemy, and really that's not what we're about. We're about strengthening ourselves as women, really stepping into our power, having that support from sisters, and really being able to honor both ourselves, the masculine within ourselves as well as the feminine, and being able to honor men. And so we have the honoring the masculine, where women listen to men, and you can get those videos. You can actually watch the video at sistershipcircle.com, and it's just really powerful for us to understand and recognize that men want to be loved as well, and they're doing the best they can. So before we dive into our discussion with our amazing guests, I'm so excited because I absolutely love having what we call Shakti jams together. I want to read you a passage from Open Your Heart, How to Be a New Generation Feminine Leader, and this is on partnership. So true partnership occurs when both people enter the relationship whole, take personal responsibility, want to give unconditionally, practice awareness of the impact of any and all actions on the other person, ask the other person what he needs, create a context that is bigger than the two individuals, want to create win-win-win, don't care about being right, care about love and affinity being present at all times, lean in, create space and freedom, commit to the partnership, love unconditionally. So that's a little bit of context for today, and actually we had this reading at one of our circles recently, and it's, I just want us to have that context of in circle, in the sisterhood, in the sistership. We get to practice these things. We get to become whole as women. We get to love ourselves unconditionally, and so then we can reflect that out to our partners. So this is for you today, whether or not you are in relationship with men, because guess what? You have men in your life. You have your dad. You have, men who are neighbors. You've got men who are friends. So we all have men in our life, and so this can be applicable to anyone who is not just, in in a girls' Catholic school or in a women's penitentiary or something like that. So I really want to have you recognize that there are men in your life, and you can enhance your relationship with men no matter where you're at. So let's dive in today. I'm really excited. Lisa Schrader is with us today, awakeningshakti.com. And she's just such a powerhouse. She just embodies the feminine. We had her as part of the virtual festival. You can check out that interview at sistershipcircle.com, all on when we were doing the Express Your Orgasm and really finding your Shakti. And the Shakti is that energy that we as women hold. It's that, the juiciness, what makes us come alive as women. And so I'm sure we'll be weaving that in today. So welcome, Lisa. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm so happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to just getting into this again with you. I just so enjoyed it last time. So thank you. And I'm honored to be in your circle. So sending out love to all of those amazing women in your sistership circle.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I would love for you, if someone did not watch that interview from the virtual festival, for you to just kind of introduce a little bit about you and what your mission is in this world, and how you're supporting women, and kind of how that will tie into today's specific topic.
Okay, sounds good. So Shakti for me is, well, it's universal energy, and it's also universal feminine energy. And that's such a big topic that for me, I have worked with it in my own life, and it has come to be sort of the cornerstone model of what I teach. That I look at it in three kind of sections of Shakti, or three topics of Shakti. And the first one is that circle. It's our relationship to spirit, to what is sacred, to what is divine in our lives, and our intimacy with that. As women that are human walking around, we are really these spiritual beings. So really that being paramount. And then the heart, our emotional life as women, our capacity to love, our capacity to be the source of love, and our energy, so our life force energy, our sexual energy, our sensual energy. And so I am committed to that in my own life, and that's really, really my mission on the planet, is to help women awaken to more of their Shakti, all of those aspects. Of course, they're not distinct or separate, they're all part of our wholeness. And, the more that we do that as women, the more we really access what I call our sustainable life force energy. So we're not pushing so hard from that masculine energy that most of us have gotten pretty good at, right? Very self-reliant, independent, goal-oriented, driven kind of energy that makes us, great mothers, makes us great entrepreneurs, right? Helps us in so many ways, but to really balance that with our feminine superpowers, which of course is what you're speaking about, Tanya. So that's really what I'm up to, and what, just in a nutshell, Shakti means to me.
And I think this would be a great place to start, and this is how I found myself, is when I was in more of my masculine power, because that's how I learned to be successful in the world, and modeling my father. And what society, I think, teaches us is, if you want to be in the workforce, you got to act like a man, you got to work like a man. And so when I was so much in my masculine energy, it was very hard for me to find partnership with men, because I was the man. And so men, actually, there was no space for them to be men, because I was taking up that energy. And so the more that I've shifted, and allowing myself to soften into my feminine powers, and really drawing my Shakti, I've been able to then allow contribution from the men in my life. They can actually show up and fill that role and be masculine and be men. So I would love for us to start here, because I think this is huge. Mm-hmm. And we could even, if you have any, well, first, what can you add to this? And also, is there anything that you can give women who are watching, who are like, well, how do I do that? Perhaps we can, do some kind of little activity or something.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, and this topic is very near and dear to my heart, because I was in an amazing, beautiful marriage for 20 years, where the dynamic between myself and my husband, who is how I affectionately call him, because we're still very close, was very much, that I was in my masculine in the relationship. So I was very much the one deciding our direction, which of course is a very masculine piece. Like, it's time to move in together. I think we should start thinking about getting married. Okay, it's time to get married. I even designed my engagement ring and said, now I want you to do a real proposal for me. So I'm going to suspend my disbelief. I already know there's an engagement ring, because I already designed it, right? But I want you to come and propose to me. So it's like I had this deep longing for what the feminine, but at least in this dynamic between, this beautiful soul and my beautiful soul, that was the relationship. And eventually I would say that contributed to the splitting of that relationship, you know, the need for us both to take different paths, because you know, I learned so much, so much. And, you know, the challenges that he and I had sexually are actually what opened this, you know, whole Dharma path up for me. You know, had we been really compatible sexually, we wouldn't have been frustrated, and we wouldn't have sought out teachings on sacred sexuality and Tantra, which is really, you know, how I began this aspect of my career. And so I'm grateful for that. But boy, what a lot of undoing I had to do around, you know, my own qualities of being driven and trying to control, you know, out of my own fear and my own childhood wounding around needing to be uber responsible and take care of a lot of, you know, chaos and change in my childhood. I really learned, and I was also raised by, you know, a feminist mom who got divorced, you know, right in the middle of the 70s. And so I really learned this, like, don't depend on a man, you know, you have to count on yourself, and you should always have something to fall back on, and make sure you get your degree. And, you know, so I was really good at doing all of that. But boy, that can really, if you are wanting strong masculine in your life or in your bed, then, you know, we have to learn how to soften. It doesn't mean that any of that is bad, of course, because it's, you know, thank goodness it, you know, it created a whole career and a life for me. But I have really, particularly in the last decade, in large part through my grief and the trauma that I went through as that marriage ended, because I really did think I would be with him for the rest of my life, and having to really do that deep looking at what am I attracting, you know, and what is my relationship with the masculine in myself and in other. So it's really, I just want to offer too for us, Tanya, a real dose of compassion. You know, Tantra means weaving, right? And so we're not wanting to throw out our masculine essence. You know, we've worked hard at that, you know, to have that, right? I mean, look at the shifts between the 1950s and now in terms of our economic power as women and our leadership. I mean, it's good what's happened. And, you know, we also, as, you know, women awake to our Shakti, want to be able to surrender into our feminine and to attract, you know, that strong masculine from our male partners. Or I would say, you know, I'm sure there must be same-sex couples in your circles too. You know, even if you're a more feminine female in relationship with another woman, and that woman is carrying more of the masculine pole, it's the same dynamic, right? So, like, how do we attract that kind of, you know, clarity, leadership, that sort of like, oh, I want to take you energy that a lot of us, you know, really long for, just to be able to let go and just surrender into our softness, into our vulnerability. And it takes a lot of courage to do that, I have to say. You know, it sounds lovely, but, you know, for a lot of us women who, you know, weren't raised that way, can be a very terrifying thing to trust the masculine, you know, to be able to surrender to the masculine in that way. And even more so if we're dealing with, you know, sexual abuse in our history, or you know, the wounding that we have around you know, not trusting the masculine. So it's not just a sort of, you know, blanket like, oh, I'm just going to start trusting the masculine. We do have to be discerning. There's a lot of examples of the masculine that aren't trustworthy. So of course we're not going to, you know, open our heart, or let alone open our body to that. So there is discernment, and yet we got to really watch that edge. I know I do all the time, of like, am I flipping back into my sort of default of wanting to control everything? And, you know, is this masculine that's in my presence actually, you know, a masculine that I love and that I trust? And is it time to relax that? You know, whether that's about choosing the restaurant we're going to go to for dinner, or being guided across the street, just walking through town, or opening my body to him.
Mm-hmm. Can I share my story of my recent little just everything we're talking about? So I went to 10 days of silent meditation, and before I went, Brent, my partner, told me he was going to create the baby room. And so all we did, the only planning we did, because he said, I'm open to input now. Like, this is my planning stage, and this is when I'm open to input. And we really didn't say much. I said, I'm just going to trust you on this one and let you do this, because you clearly have an idea in your head, because that's what he was telling me. And so we just decided on the color of the room. That was it. We wanted lavender. And so on day 7 of the 10-day retreat, I'm having this whole, I'm totally in my head about how he doesn't show up the way I want him to, and blah, 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 and, just, I don't know if I want to be with him. And then I really looked at where, what it came down to after I went in this whole loop all day was, wow, well, where am I just not seeing reality as it is, and where am I not just recognizing his contribution? And where am I actually thinking that his contribution isn't enough, right? Like that whole, what you're saying around, I got my ring designed and now he's got to do it this certain way, and so it was like that's how I was relating. And so I let it all go, and he picks me up. He actually drove 2.5 hours out to the desert to drop me off and pick me up, because he wanted to provide that for me, being 34 weeks pregnant, which was just amazing. And so he hasn't mentioned the baby room yet, and I'm like, who knows if he did it, right? And I'm like, okay, Tanya, don't get disappointed. And he says, so do you want to hear about the baby room? I said, yeah, And he said, yeah, so it's not I didn't get quite as much done as I wanted to. And I was like, okay, keep yourself in balance, keep yourself in check, don't get disappointed. And so he totally surprised me. I walk in and the baby room is done, and it's gorgeous, beautiful, and beyond expectation. I'm like, I just burst into tears. I walk in the room, I'm sobbing, and the whole day I'm just praising him, right? Oh my God, this makes me so happy. It's so gorgeous. It's exactly perfect and all this. And it was just this talk about absolute surrender of no input, letting him show up, and then really acknowledging and praising and telling him how much it meant to me and how much I love it. All week, all he wanted to do was to provide everything for me. One night he's like, so you want me to give you a massage tonight? And then it was just all week he was just wanting to provide, because I gave him that space to show up and to shine and to do his masculine thing. It's kind of we think of designing this room that I'm in right now, as maybe that's a little bit more feminine of the designing, but for him it was the building, using his hands and building the desk and putting together the crib and painting, and the design and all that was him expressing that masculine. And so it was just so amazing to have that experience and to have him show up. And so I told him that I wanted to have a baby moon for Valentine's Day. And a baby moon is kind of that last honeymoon before the baby comes.
Great.
And so I said, okay, so this is what, here would be my ideas. Number one place I would like to go is Laguna, because it's only an hour away and it's not in San Diego. And if that doesn't work out, then San Clemente or Coronado or La Jolla. That would be, and I would like to go to dinner, and I like whatever activities we do. We can even just hang out in bed all day in the hotel, whatever. Ball's in your court. And I've completely let go of any attachment of what that's going to look like, if it even happens, and just allow him to surprise and delight me.
Nice.
If and because I was just kind of thinking about that of like, wow, I have no idea if he's doing it or not. Like I don't know, and I've let go of that attachment. But we can't, if we're constantly nagging them, there's no space for them to actually show up and surprise and delight us.
It's true. Yeah, and there's a few pieces that I love. I love your story. There's a couple pieces I just want to highlight that in terms of my understanding of what's potent for the masculine. And the first one is that we really trust their direction. So, that is a very important quality for a man, to feel that, his woman is really trusting his direction. So, in both of those examples where you're like, I'm going to go off to the retreat, and we've agreed on lavender, and the ball's in your court, right? With the baby moon or the room, like, I trust your direction. It not just his direction, like how's he going to do it, but that he will do it, right? And that goes back into another really core masculine quality, which is that integrity. Can I trust that you will be your word, right? And so when the masculine says, I'm going to do this, and then they do it, that helps us relax. Like, okay, yeah, if I can trust that he's going to take out the trash, or that he's going to pick up milk on his way home from work, the chances are pretty good then that I'll be able to build up enough trust to open my heart to him, and to open my body, and ultimately to open, like, the treasure trove of my divine feminine that is possible in sacred union with you. But we're checking that in our own feminine body, right? We're looking for evidence that this is a trustworthy being. So, what I would offer for all of us is and if you have wounding around this with the masculine or with your man, like, well, yeah, I'm trying to trust him, but he keeps falling down, or he's not doing what he says he's going to do. That, of course, the challenge with that is that the man has to really, or the masculine really has to decide, I'm going to step into more integrity, and so that I can be more trustworthy. And hopefully they will. And I think as the feminine, the embodiment of the feminine over here, to really look for times where we can acknowledge or really hand over that, authentically, I'm trusting your direction on this. You choose. You decide. And I also love, Tanya, that you gave some parameters, right? Like, I want to go away. I don't really want to go more than about an hour geographically away, of course, because I could have this baby any minute, and I want to be obviously on the coast. Like, you gave some parameters, and then to hand it over, and so, yeah, the trusting their direction, honoring their direction, and trusting your man is pretty critical. To just, keeping that polarity alive. And this obviously goes back for us too, working with our own masculine. Are we being our word, right? And so when we now, the feminine is very changeable, right? And so we can very often go into flow. Well, yeah, I said I said I wanted Chinese for dinner tonight. That was yesterday. Today it's like all about Italian. So I'm just, that's part of my Shakti flow. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not trustworthy or in integrity. It means I'm in my flow. But we also really, in our own relationship to our masculine, I think we have to be aware of the shadow of that, right? Because we can get into that sort of new agey feminine thing, like, oh, well, it's just not my flow. I know I said I'd be there, but it wasn't calling to me today, right? And we can be like flaky and irresponsible. So yeah, but that piece is really, really important.
Yeah, I want to add too that we were struggling with the whole chore thing, and I felt there was a point when I felt like I was doing everything in the house, And he was like, well, you don't, first of all, like, you don't let me. And I had a hard time wrapping my brain around that, and I know a lot of women struggle with this. It's exactly what you were talking about of, you know, like him taking out the trash.
Right.
And so there was a point when he felt like no matter what he was doing, it wasn't enough.
Right.
I wasn't giving him space to contribute anything, and I wasn't giving him, like, the time. It was like if it wasn't done on my schedule, I would do it. This is so huge for women. And when there was something that shifted, and it was like last night I get home and the trash is out, right? Monday night's the trash night, and it's out. I didn't have to say anything. And so then it's an acknowledgement of him doing it versus what he's not doing. And the more, I think that was a huge shift. The more I was recognizing what he was doing, and the more I gave him wins on the scoreboard, the more the integrity shot up.
Yeah.
And I think this is huge for women who are feeling like, well, my man won't contribute, or, you know, I ask him to do something and he won't. It's like, well, are you actually giving him the time and the space to do it? And then are you acknowledging him for what he did? So it's kind of like training a dog, you know, like.
Well, and it's that and another key piece here that you're also speaking to in these examples is appreciation. You know, you've mentioned it multiple times, and that, I mean, we all want that, but I particularly think in the masculine-feminine dynamic, that's another place where men want to feel like she appreciates me, she trusts me, you know, she counts on me for direction here, right? Like those are all things that really, you know, are core masculine. So when we can appreciate, you know, and again, do that in an authentic way, not a manipulative way, but to really, you know, honestly be looking for that. And the other thing you're speaking to that I love is that, you know, I can so relate to this because there's been so many times in relationships where I've gotten stuck in it, but you know, we create these frames, right? And then we look through them. And so if we're in that place of, you know, nagging about the trash and anticipating that he's going to screw it up again and that he's not going to do it and that, you know, he's not the man for me and he's not taking care of me, like, and we keep, even if we're just thinking that, those thoughts are not benign. And so we've created this frame. And, you know, this is true with everybody. When we have them in a box like that and it's labeled, you know, doesn't contribute or whatever, and we keep sending energy and looking at them through that frame, it happens for us too, right? It's like I've had that experience where it's like that is not me, but I cannot seem to start acting differently here because there's just such a strong flow of expectation that that's who I am. And so there's a big piece for us too, and I think appreciating the little things is one way to start shifting, but to, you know, really start seeing him differently, making room for him to show up, right? Which might mean you just need to take a couple breaths or let it go for a little bit longer, or, you know, maybe he doesn't wipe down the counter as expertly as you do, but there, you know, there is the counter being wiped down, you know, just to start to kind of, you know, ratchet ourselves more towards the positive frame, because the frame works both ways, right? And so if we have the frame of like, wow, this man, like you're saying your man did this week, like this man just keeps showing up for me, you know, he just keeps giving to me and contributing to me, like I can really count on him. That's a whole nother frame, right, that generates more of that. I mean, we all know this, but it's just really important because, you know, if we've got that negative frame, we're constantly gathering evidence to support that, right? And we're looking all the time for that kind of evidence. And yeah, we want to create the positive polarity, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I would give a little tip or a little tool for everyone, because this is what was going on for me, is how many times is he saying, oh, let me get that, and you say, no, I got it.
Right.
And, you know, this happens sometimes where we're in the kitchen, he's like, let me, you know, I can do that. And I'm like, no, I got it. I'm already doing it. And in that moment, so start to notice how many times you're doing that, and then in that moment, can you actually surrender and say, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And let him contribute, and then thank him for doing it, even if you were in your flow doing it. Because sometimes we get in our flow and we're like, no, I'm right in the middle of this, right? And then it won't get done if I don't do it right now. Can you let that go and just let him contribute in that moment?
Yeah. It's that self-reliant thing.
Yes.
You know, like, and it's that I heard David Data say this on a recording recently. It was a little graphic, but it cracked me up and it seemed quite relevant to me. And he said, no one wants to fuck self-reliant. It's like, if we're being like super self-reliant, like, I got it, I can handle it, no problem, if we're in that place, that if you have a strong masculine who wants to, longs to ravage you, there is nothing sexy about that for him. Nothing. Right? I mean, there's just no openness there. It's like, no, I got it, I can handle it, right? There's no, like, it's not being open to being contributed to. And the thing that we need to know is, like, thank God for my self-reliance. It's not that that's a bad thing. We don't want to make it bad. Like, every time I have conversations like those women, they're like, oh my God, I'm so self-reliant, I need to stop doing that. It's not that we don't want to throw that out, right? So it's more about weaving it, and when's it appropriate? And, is it possible to just start, maybe just a little bit more looking for places where you can allow the masculine to contribute to you. I went after the sort of, dark night of my soul period after the end of my marriage. I had a couple wild relationships after that, and then I really went into that place of like, wow, I need to figure out who I am in my feminine and just, really take a break. And I kind of went through this, celibacy period for almost a year, and was really doing my inner work. And as I started emerging from that, I was like, okay, well, I feel like I'm ready to start to engage with the masculine again. And it was about that time that somebody came over to my house, and they looked around my house, and they were like, your altars and everything about your house is just like uber feminine. There's no sort of masculine energy here. Like, all your art is very feminine. And I realized, like, even in my space, there wasn't really room for the masculine. And so I started, like, even on my altar, started bringing in more, masculine objects and, pictures of the masculine and feminine together, and just kind of started weaving that in. And then as I went out into the world, I started to look, like, do I even make eye contact with men? I was fearful of men, and I was also kind of hostile towards men. I just was kind of like, no, And so as I started to just soften with that and open, and just make eye contact with men, and I started actually doing some work on how do I just relate to men as brothers, and just start to engage with the masculine instead of being like the sexual, conquest of, trying to get sexual energy from them, or get admired for my sexual energy from them, but just kind of drop that and just start to be contributed to. As soon as I started to make that shift, it was like, men started opening doors for me, and I would let them, and I'd say, thank you so much, and I was struggling with something in the trunk of my car, and a man comes running across the parking lot. I can help you with that. Can I lift that up for you? And just, like, I realized, like, wow, the masculine everywhere wants to honor the goddess, wants to honor the feminine, and to just to drop that sort of self-reliant piece and just allow myself to start to be contributed to, and just be curious about the masculine, like, wow, what makes you tick, and how do you feel about this, and how do you see things, and just it was really a powerful period for me. And that period, there was a few years, actually brought me to the current beloved relationship that I'm in. In fact, he and I met in a workshop that was about sort of a gender reconciliation, like, how does the masculine and the feminine just relate to each other without the sexual energy, right? Just like as brothers and sisters. And that was the foundation of my relationship with him for 6 months before we ever actually opened to our feelings towards one another. So yeah, I'm just offering that because I think you know, it is, we're in such a dance right now in the shifting of relationship, right? And kind of going from that equality model that was super important to this, you know, what does it look like to really be in sacred union with one another that encompasses this beautiful polarity, right, of giving and receiving and masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang of us. And that, to me, that's what's so juicy, you know, like, I love being a financially independent, you know, woman who has my own business and has done my work, just like that beautiful piece you read, Tanya, like in my wholeness now, I have attracted a man who is also in his wholeness, and we get to, you know, dance in this beautiful way where we relax that, you know, need to have everything even all the time. And, you know, I get to be contributed to. I get to surprise and delight him with, you know, my femininity, and he gets to show up in his strong, you know, masculinity. And yeah, good.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing about my relationship is, yeah, I'm at a place of, I'm financially independent. I can take care of myself,
Exactly.
and I'm whole, and I've done my work, and you know, I was like, oh, I want this super spiritual. Like, it was almost like I wanted this feminine man, and I just got so clear, like, no, I want this man who is a builder and uses his hands and can fix stuff and drives a truck, and he's just ultra masculine. And what's beautiful is, and he really reflected this last weekend, was how much he's personally grown spiritually, and yet he still has that integrity of his masculine. And so it's you know, him stepping more into the divine masculine in relationship with me, and yet he's not losing that testosterone, because it's really important. It's really, really important. So, and I'm recognizing that, you know, I think, and when I interviewed Arjuna and John Gray was talking about that, like, sometimes men, when they get too cuddly and we want, like, then we get all needy and they get all in their oxytocin, and they need space to get back into the testosterone. Exactly. And that was a huge, like, hit for me, of where I was doing that with Brent, and I'm like, no, like, I need to give him his space. I need to let him go in his cave. I need to let him do his man things, so he is in his testosterone, because that's when we got the spark, you know, in our relationship, is when he's in that.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
All enmeshed, right? And this has been a really powerful learning for me too. And it's so funny because, like, I have to really check myself, because you know, I think in all relationships, I certainly notice this with Michael. I'll say, like, oh, you know, I wish he was more spiritual. I wish he'd meditate with me. You know, I wish that you know, he sort of, like, traveled in these, you know, realms that I like to travel in. And, you know, he'll look at me and say, like, you know, you are hooey. Like, you are out there, you know, like, you're a little kooky, right? And then I'll be like, oh, we need to close that gap. Like, he just needs to understand more of, you know, my spirituality, and then, you know, he'll be more like me, and then you know. And what I am realizing more and more is exactly what you're pointing to, is that, you know, it's good to have spaces in our togetherness, and, you know, in this reality that we're in of, you know, duality, we're here because we're so excited about sort of closing the gap, you know, like, not feeling the separation. But if there is no gap to close, right, then we don't get to have that dance together. And so it's just reminding me, because it's easy for me to go into that sort of default mode of, like, oh, I wish he was more this, or I wish he was more that. And I hear women say that all the time. And yes, I would say at the core, having compatibility is important. Like, if you're so far apart that you feel like you have nothing in common, or there's no sort of crossover, that can be a challenge. But that is every bit as much of a challenge what you're speaking about, where we get all so, you know, we do exactly the same thing, and, you know, he sees things exactly the way I see things. And just to remember that, you know, that sort of gentle conflict between his point of view or, you know, my point of view, or like you're saying, you got this, my man is very much like that too. Like he loves to build things. In fact, he's renovating his house right now. That kind of physicality of him and the sort of emotionality or spirituality of me, those things are designed to dance together, right? Not to, it's not about us eliminating those things so that we can have sameness, you know. So just, you know, I would offer that to everyone too, just to, you know, really check, you know, do you really want him to, you know, want to do everything that you do? Or can you enjoy that there is this little sparky dance between you where he, you know, he might think you're a little kooky and you might think he's kind of brutish, and, you know, that's okay.
Yeah. And for me, it's that he adores the kookiness.
Exactly.
And that's the piece. It's you know, it just goes back to this 10-day retreat again. Of he drops me off and he's like, oh my God, this looks like torture. I can never do this.
Exactly.
And he's like, you know, the only way that I think I can do this type, like any type of meditation, is if, you know, he's like, I could see myself climbing up to the top of a mountain and doing some meditation, and that to me, you know, it's like wilderness. Like he's got to have his goal to make it to the top of the mountain, and then have silence up there, and that's when he can like have that time alone. But it's not that he's thinking less of me for doing that. He actually admires and respects my spiritual path and the fact that I'm going.
Right.
And so there's we have a mutual respect of our own, of how we spend our time, and so we've created freedom for each other, and there's no judgment. Yeah, would I like him to go on a 10-day silent retreat? Do I think it would be beneficial for him? Absolutely. Do I trust that his path is unfolding exactly as it is and that he is evolving as a man? Yeah. He doesn't need to do what I do.
Right. Right,
So,
exactly.
I want to transition to a topic. You know, we've got about 10 minutes left. And it's been alive lately for me, and I've seen it, and so I want us to just kind of touch on it because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
How many women I've been hearing who they're in relationship with a man. Doesn't matter if they're married or just a boyfriend, and they want to do something, and either they have their own money or the man is the breadwinner, and there's this giving their power away and asking permission to do this thing, and how they're actually approaching it is resulting in a no. And I found this, you know, for example, with someone, you know, you're watching this right now, the audience, and you want to do Lisa's 6-month program, right? You've really resonated. You're like, oh my God, yes, I want to awaken my Shakti. I want to do this. And oh shoot, husband's going to have to pay for this, right? And God, he's tired of me doing personal development courses. And so there's this, well, I've got to ask permission, and it's like there's a hierarchy in the relationship, and it's not coming from, this is really what I want to do. How can I actually create partnership with him so he can provide me what I need?
Mm.
And I can actually allow him to be a contribution to my growth by him saying, yes, I will give you the money for this program to do. I've been seeing so many women having the breakthrough around this, but also really, really struggling and losing their power and putting, you know, letting their man kind of dictate what they do. So I'd like for us to just kind of touch on this, and if you have anything on this topic, because I think it's really alive.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you're bringing it up, and it's like as you're speaking about that woman in relationship and needing to ask permission and or really having something that she feels powerfully about wanting to do, I was just right back in my marriage because I can so relate to that. And it wasn't even, it was more, at least in my relationship, marriage at the time, it was that we were stretched so thin financially, and our money was all enmeshed, of course, and so it was more like, we can't afford that, $1,000 for you to go do that retreat because, we are paying private school tuition for our child, right? And so there was just a lot of I just have a lot of compassion for that because that was the, I would say, the dominant stressor in my marriage was financial stress. And of course that goes back to his childhood and my childhood. We both brought our money stories into that marriage where, we both came from families that really struggled around money, and there was a lot of power dynamics between husband and wife around, who got to do what and who was in charge of the purse, So I can really relate to this question. And I just want to say as a footnote that having, come out of that marriage, which was terrifying to me, it was the first time I had to totally economically support myself. And it was a very rocky road for me. I was very much, dipping in and out of poverty and struggling and in debt for several years as I sort of went through the baptism by fire of actually getting on my feet economically. And I am so grateful, Om Shri Lakshmi Nama, because Lakshmi, that just the flowering of abundance is so happening in my world right now. I think as a result of going through that intensity, and I have to say where I'm sitting now, is in such a place of independence with my money, and I'm out of debt, and I'm investing, and I am supporting my daughter at a private university, and I'm giving my money away, and I've got people on my team now that I can support because of the abundance of the business. So I'm just offering that because it's been a full spectrum, pendulum swing over to a place of beautiful abundance right now, and autonomy and sovereignty with my own money. And I love that. I gotta say, Tanya, like it was something I wanted more than anything, was to be able to stand in that place. And so what I would say to the women, wherever you might find yourself in your own spectrum there, I really do believe for us as women, it's really important for us to have our own money. And so, if I had to do it over again in my marriage, I would have, made an agreement with my husband about, a fund for me and a fund for him. And even if it was we could only put $20 a month toward that individually, but that there would be independent money so that we're not having to negotiate with one another around, can I have your permission to do this? I think that is really, really key. And then we get to let go of what they choose to do with their little bucket of money, however they want to spend that. Because, when that calling, like you were just talking about, that calling comes forward, and it feels like, oh, I am supposed to do this, and even though I cannot figure out how I'm going to do it financially, that I think it's important to honor that if it's clear and conscious, right? It's not like, I'm at the mall and suddenly I have to have that pair of boots that cost $300. You might want to double check that impulse. But if it's truly like a calling, then it's great to have that resource that's there. And I would say if it's not, I've done an amazing job of manifesting things when I've had no money. Simply, if it's a true calling, like if it's a true sort of soul impulse towards something that you want, to absolutely hand it over to Mahashakti, really to pray about it, to look for who else could support you, who else might be able to support you with that dream, and to allow for the miraculous to occur, because it's happened. It has happened to me so many times. Now it's just a game I love to play. Like I will say yes to something, and usually sometimes within 24 hours, whatever that outlay of money was, it's come back tenfold. And so, just to start working with your own magic, your own Shakti, your own ability to magnetize to you what it is that you're wanting, and to look for ways to create, even inside of relationship, a little bit of your own money so that you can choose.
I'm so glad that that's such a tangible, practical tool that women can use. And if I look at it, that's exactly how my parents worked. And my parents have been married for at least, I think, 40 years.
Wow.
They've been together since they were 16. They're in their 60s now. But they were together for like 7 years before they got married. And they've been, my parents are such amazing role models in terms of financial abundance, and they invest, and they're just so smart financially. Nice. And that is exactly the thing that they did. As I specifically remember my mom having her little account.
Right.
And so we can go shop. One of the things is we just love to go shopping together, and she'd be like, yeah, I've got my fund. Like, I've saved up we would do these mother and daughter trips we'd go to San Francisco for a weekend. And it was her money, and she didn't have to tell Dad what we were doing or what we were spending the money on. And it was brilliant. And the same thing, he got to do his little things, and huge. So thank you for bringing that tool. And I think that's a great, And then the piece around like really handing it over, because I've had that happen as well. Like, I literally have asked God to show up, and it shows up. Yeah. So, awesome. Yeah. So we're wrapping up on time here, and you have the Awakening Shakti 6-month program coming up for women. So if anyone's like just really, really resonating with you and wants to know more, the link, ladies, is tiny.cc/awakening Shakti. No www, so just tiny.cc awakening Shakti. You want to share a little bit about that before we wrap up here?
Yeah, this is, thank you for speaking about it, Tanya. This is my baby. This is my signature program. It's really the best of what I have to offer, and it's over 6 months. So we really, we start at the crown of the head, we work down, we work with the breast, we work into the womb, we get into yoni, we get into our kundalini, sacred sexual energy. We talk about truth-telling and our intuition. So it's just this real holistic, really beautiful unfolding of what it means to be, in our radiance and in our Shakti, both spiritually, in our hearts, and of course in our sacred sexual energy. And I only offer it once a year now. I used to offer it a couple different times a year, but I'm pretty full on right now, which is such a blessing. And so it's just it just comes around once a year. It just happens to be that we're talking today, and it opens on Thursday, February 5th, and you can of course enroll after that. But we've got a beautiful circle of women from around the world. We're really engaging in some intimate conversations. It's all done on the phone. And so I invite your women, if they're feeling that call, to check it out, because I'd love to have them in the circle.
Yeah, what I'm really hearing is that this, that first sentence that I read from the book of both people are coming to the relationship whole. And if you are in that place of really wanting to create sacred partnership and really that equal partnership where you're both able to contribute, and you really want to get to that whole place as a woman, and in your feminine power and using your magical feminine superpowers, this would be a great place to really deepen into that intention. Yeah. So yeah, tiny.cc/awakening Shakti, and you can find out more and sign up if that feels good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So this is a special week because we are wanting to hear from the men as well on this week topic around partnership with men and honoring the masculine and how we hold our men. And so in a couple days we're going to be interviewing Arjuna as a very conscious man on honoring the masculine and really hearing from a man's perspective. So tune in for that one, and you get to, you just heard it from the women's point of view. Really awesome to hear the other side as well, and for you to have, this model of a conscious man be able to speak on and really affirm a lot of what Lisa and I talked about. So join us on Thursday or watch the recording, and thank you for being part of our beautiful circle of women all around the world, Sistership Circle, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.